Marhaba. Welcome to Sufi Voices. I'm Wafa, and as Rumi says, out beyond all notions of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field and I'll meet you there. I look forward to connecting with you every week to expand our hearts and learn about the universal language of love. Welcome to a new edition of Sufi Voices. I'm delighted to be with you today because we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite subject, water. Why water? First of all, I was born near the water. I was born near the sea in the city of Beirut, and I have huge fondness for that sea. As a child, climbing on the rocks of the Rawshe and looking down upon the beautiful turquoise blue Mediterranean and learning how to swim. I also wanted to talk about water because I realized I have been 115 days living above the water. We have been isolating by a lake in Canada, southwest of Montreal, and I have my bedroom by the water, and every morning, every lunchtime, every evening, whenever my eyes need a rest, they go towards the water. And it's been fascinating to observe how water changes, how water can defy Monet and Turner, who are brilliant at painting it. It is unbelievable how rewarding it is to live on the water, to observe the light on the water. Therefore, I thought we will try and see what the Sufis have to say about water. We will see what Rumi, Nizami, Hafiz have written about this wonderful subject. I hope you agree it is a worthwhile subject, seeing it's the summer and people will be jumping in and out of water quite a lot now that COVID lockdown has eased up. We will start with a beautiful quote by Rumi in which he says, "We are the mirror as well as the face in it. We are tasting the taste this minute of eternity. We are pain and what cures pain, both. We are the sweet cold water and the jar that pours." What about that for a beautiful opening to our water session? I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I've enjoyed preparing it for you. Be like the sun for grace and mercy. Be like the night to cover others' fault. Be like running water for generosity. Be like death for rage and anger. Be like the earth for modesty. Appear as you are. Be as you appear. I love the idea of running water compared to generosity. I absolutely loved it. He also writes, "You have no idea how hard I've looked for a gift to bring you. Nothing seemed right. What's the point of bringing gold to the gold mine or water to the ocean? Everything I came up with was like taking spices to the Orient. It's no good giving my heart and my soul because you already have these. So I've brought you a mirror. Look at yourself and remember me." Thank you, Rumi. And he also writes, "A lifetime without love is of no account. Love is the water of life. Drink it down with heart and soul. What hurts the soul, asks Rumi? To live without tasting the water of its own essence. He also tells us, don't look to anyone for your needs, for the one who created you waters you. And he also says, wherever water flows, life flourishes. Wherever tears fall, divine mercy is shown. And he also says, in one of my favorite poems of his, definitely written for his beloved Shams of Tabriz, a moment of happiness, you and I, sitting on the veranda, apparently two, but one in soul, you and I. We feel the flowing water of life here, you and I, with the garden's beauty and the birds singing. The stars will be watching us, and we will show them what it is to be a thin crescent moon. You and I, unselfed, will be together, indifferent to idle speculation, you and I. The parrots of heaven will be cracking sugar as we laugh together, you and I. In one form upon this earth, and in another form in a timeless, sweet land. Both a swimmer and a drowned man are in the water, writes Rumi. The latter is born by the water and controlled by it, while the swimmer is borne along by his own power and of his own volition. Every movement made by the drowned man, indeed every act and word that issue from him, comes from the water, not from him. The saints are like this. They have died before death. And he also says, nothing can help me but that beauty. There was a dawn, I remember, when my soul heard something from your soul. I drank water from your spring and felt the current take me. And talking about current, it is extraordinary how much it changes when I'm looking at this lake from my window. The current can go to the right, can go to the left, it can ripple, it can become silvery, it can become shimmery, it can become like a Monet kind of water lily kind of color. It sometimes reflects the color from the sky. It is grey, it is silver, it is pink, it is white, sometimes it's turquoise blue, and that's absolutely my favorite color because I come from the land of turquoise blue. So I have found this stay by the water incredibly nourishing, both to my soul and to my eyes. I wonder if you feel the same about water yourselves. Water can be a great teacher, according to Rumi. So he asks us, who could be so lucky who comes to a lake for water and sees the reflection of the moon? And he also tells us, not only the thirsty seek the water as well seeks the thirsty. I love this one very much. And of course, the most famous one of all, love is the water of life. Drink it down with heart and soul. I would love to have this in my study. framed to remember it every single day. And he also always reminds us the Spirit is very near. We can't see it, but we have to reach for it. So he advises, don't be a jar full of water whose rim is always dry. Don't be the rider who gallops all night and never sees the horse that is beneath him. He's reminding us to be a grateful, thankful person and sees what is underneath the surface of things. From Rumi, we turn to Hafiz, who wrote a stunning poem called I Know I Was the Water, beautifully translated by Daniel Ladinsky in his book The Gifts, poems by Hafiz, the great Sufi master. Hafiz writes, who can believe the divine kindness of God? Who can comprehend what happens when separation ends? For now, because of my union with reality, now, whenever I hear a story of one of his prophets having come into this world, I know I was a tree that stood near, leaned down and took notes. I know I was the earth that measured the infinite arch in his feet. I know I was the water. I know I was the food and water that nourished him, that went into our beloved's mouth. Pilgrim, if it is in your wish, you will someday see you sad inside of Hafiz. And it was with the lyre you gave me, we sang of truth and the sublime intimacy. I know I was the water that quenched the Christ's thirst. I know I am the food and water that goes into every mouth. Thank you, Hafiz. You know, not only Jesus Christ spoke in parables, but the Sufi masters spoke in parables as well. So I found a beautiful parable called The Parable of the Stream and the Desert. And it is dated 1870, this particular version. It was written by a guy called Awad Afifi, the Tunisian. It was also printed in England in 1899 by Sir Fairfax Cartwright Mystic Rose from the Garden of the King, published in Britain. So, what is this parable about? This parable is about a stream. A stream from its source in far-off mountains, passing through every kind and description of countryside, at last reached the sands of the desert. Just as it had crossed every other barrier, the stream tried to cross this one. But it found that as fast as it ran into the sand, its waters disappeared. The stream was convinced, however, that its destiny was to cross this desert, and yet there was no way. Now, a hidden voice coming from the desert itself whispered, "The wind crosses the desert, and so can the stream." The stream objected that it was dashing itself against the sand and only getting absorbed, that the wind could fly, and this was why it could cross a desert. By hurtling In your accustomed way, you cannot get across, said the voice. You will either disappear or become a march. You must allow the wind to carry you over to your destination, whispered the voice. But how could this happen? Asked the stream. By allowing yourself to be absorbed in the wind. This idea was not acceptable to the stream. After all, it had never been absorbed before. It did not want to lose its individuality. And once having lost it, how was one to know that it could ever be regained? The wind, said the sand, performs this function. It takes up water, carries it over the desert, and then lets it fall again. It falls as rain, and the water again becomes a river. How can I know that this is true? Asked the stream. It is so, and if you don't believe it, you cannot become more than a quagmire, and even that could take many years, and it certainly is not the same as a stream. But can I not remain the same stream that I am today? Insisted the stream. You cannot, in either case, remain so, the whisper said. Your essential part is carried away and forms a stream again. You are called what you are even today because you do not know which part of you is the essential one. When he heard this, certain echoes began to arise in the thoughts of the stream. Dimly he remembered the estate in which he, or maybe some part of him, had been held in the arms of a wind. He also remembered, or did he, that this was the real thing, not necessarily the obvious thing to do. And the stream raised his vapour into the welcoming arms of the wind. He surrendered. The wind gently and easily bore it upwards and along, letting it fall softly as soon as it reached the roof of a mountain, many miles away. And because he had had his doubts, the stream was able to remember and record more strongly in his mind the details of the experience. The stream reflected, yes, now I have learned my true identity. The stream was learning, but the sands whispered, we know, because we see it happen day after day, and because we, the sands, extend from the riverside all the way to the mountain. And that is why it is said that the way in which the stream of life is to continue on its journey is written in the sands. The water said to the dirty one, "Come here." The dirty one said, "I'm too ashamed." The water replied, "How will your shame be washed away without me?" And of course that was Rumi who wrote that. He also said, "Search no matter what situation you're in, O thirsty one, search for water constantly. Finally, the time will come when you will reach the spring." I really love his optimism. It's amazing how uplifting it is. And I love what he said. Keep digging your well. Water is there somewhere. So we are going to keep digging our wells, and in digging I found that I had written a story about water long time ago, and it's in my 7 Wise Princesses, which I had read some stories to you before, and this story is called the story of Khair and Shar, good and bad, and it is originally a poem by Nizami, another great Sufi poet, and I had put that poem into prose into a book called The 7 Wise Princesses. And our story today will be told by the princess who lives in the sandalwood pavilion, in the brown pavilion smelling of beautiful sandalwood. So of course the story has something to do with water and has something to do with the benefits of sandalwood. I hope you will enjoy it. One Thursday morning, Bahram woke up with the smell of sandalwood and musk filling the air. He remembered that it was the day for visiting the Chinese princess in the sandalwood pavilion of Jupiter. "Bring me my brown robe and my brown turban with the tiger eye clasp," he called to his servants. Then he jumped out of bed and started to prepare himself for his visit. The princess's name was Yagma Naz. She had straight black hair and eyes the colour of chestnuts. Her lips were like fresh dates, her skin like porcelain. She moved with grace. She sang like a nightingale and could paint on silk lustrous landscapes, butterflies, trees, flowers, birds. After admiring her paintings and listening to some enchanting music, Bahram shared a Chinese meal with the princess. Noodles with bean sprouts were served, along with bamboo shoots and water chestnuts, followed by honeyed chicken and lychees in syrup. "Will you tell me why you chose to live in the sandalwood pavilion, and why you love brown, the colour of sandalwood?" asked Shah Bahram. "I am eager to hear your story." So, while Bahram sipped jasmine tea, Yagma Naz began her tale. Two young men decided to go on a long journey through the desert to another town. They were as different as day and night. One was called Khair, which is good in Arabic, for he was gentle and kind. The other one was called Shar, which means nasty in Arabic, or even evil, for he was truly nasty and wicked. Their names mirrored their natures. Both carried provisions on their back and water skins in their bags. The journey was long and the desert was hot, and Khair had soon drunk all his water. "I am sure there will be water further on," he told himself. Shar, who knew better, had kept aside one water skin hidden at the bottom of his bag. Being a wicked man, he did not mention this to Khair. Khair was getting thirsty and weak. Whenever they stopped for a nap, Shar would drink secretly from his remaining water skin while his companion slept. Khair continued walking without complaint. His throat was dry and his head was burning. At last he fell onto the sand, unable to move any further, and said, "I need water, my friend. I cannot bear it any longer." Shar laughed at him and said, Ha! Ha! How stupid can you get? How can you go through the desert hoping to find water? Ha! There isn't an oasis around every corner, is there?" With these words, Shar drew his water skin from his bag and drank openly in front of his friend without sharing a drop. Khair looked at him with sad eyes and a sadder heart. "How can you be a friend when you refuse to share your water? How can you lie to me and see me in despair?" "Who said we are friends?" Shar answered. "Each man for himself. Doesn't that what the law of the jungle says?" "This is not a jungle, and we're not animals," Khair replied. "In the name of friendship, I ask you, please, just a drop. My thirst is killing me." "Then die," said Shar, teasing Khair by drinking some more. "Look, friend," Khair begged. "Look, deep in the pocket of my bag are 2 rubies, as big as cherries. Take them and give me water in exchange." "I know your tricks," Shar answered. "You give me the rubies now, but when we reach the town, you will tell people I have stolen them from you." "No, thanks. I don't want your rubies." "What do you want then?" Khair asked. "I want 2 jewels more precious than rubies or diamond. I want your eyes." "My eyes in exchange for water? You must be joking, my friend." "Not at all," Shar answered, for he was truly evil. "If you want water, that is the deal." Khair spent the night in agony, thinking of ways to solve his problem. When morning came, he was so desperate for a drink that he told himself, "If I die of thirst, what use are my eyes to me? I would prefer to be blind than to die." He then called his so-called friend and said, "Wake up, bring your dagger and take my eyes in exchange for water. It seems your heart has become as hard as ice." Shar, who was waiting for this moment all night, drew out his dagger and took Khair's eyes out. Do you believe it? Such nastiness! He then drank all the water himself, spat on his friend, and went off laughing. Ha, ha, ha! Taking with him the 2 rubies and all Khair's money. Khair could not believe his eyes, that Shar could be so wicked. But what eyes should he believe? For he had none left. So he rolled on the ground, rubbing his forehead in the dust, moaning loudly and losing blood. "Oh, oh, oh, oh." Now, not far from where Khair lay almost dead was a Kurdish camp of 7 to 8 tents. Their chief was good, noble, and fair. He brought his flock there every year for pasture. The Kurdish chief had a daughter with dark hair that fell in waves well below her shoulders. Her eyes were the color of violets, and her lips were as red as pomegranates. She had a small mole on her cheek, and her face shone like the full moon. She came that morning to the spring that lay nearby to draw some water to drink. Hearing soft moans a little way off, she rushed to see who it was. It was Khair, of course. If he had eyes to see himself, he would have died of fright, for he looked almost dead. But the chief's daughter, who had a good and loving heart, bent over and turned him around. She saw his face covered in blood and a pair of eyes lying beside him in the dust. "What happened to you, poor man?" she asked. "Who is the monster who did this to you?" In a voice as faint as a baby's breath, Khair said, "Please give me some water, I beg you." The chief's daughter, who had a jar full of water, lifted Khair's head and poured a few drops into his mouth. She then washed his face and his wounds and gave him some more to drink. This time he could not stop drinking. His dried-up soul felt alive once more, as if the water of life was pouring onto him, into him, and filling him. And for the first time since his misfortunes began, his face broke into a crooked smile. After a little while, Khair had enough strength in him to tell his story to the chief's daughter. When he had finished, she immediately picked up the bleeding eyes and put them gently back into their sockets, binding them with a bandage around his head. "Come with me to my father's camp," she said. "He will help you get well." She then helped Khair get back on his feet and, holding him by the hand, guided him to the camp. Back at her father's tent, she asked a servant to prepare a bed for him and give him meat broth and bread to eat. Khair, who was starving, ate his fill, then settled for a long rest. When sunset came, the Kurdish chief returned to find a guest sleeping in his tent. "Where does this man come from?" he asked his daughter. "What happened to his eyes?" She explained everything, then said, "Father, you know a lot about herbs and potions and spells. Do you know a way to make this man see again?" The chief thought for a while and said, "There is a tree beside the spring where you went this morning. It is about 30 feet tall. Its leaves look like leather and it smells like a flower. It is a sandalwood tree. Its roots are used for oils, while its wood is made into precious boxes. Go to that tree and get me some of its leaves. Crush them well, then strain the juice and put it straight into this man's eyes. It will take away the pain and help him recover his sight." The daughter did as she was told and poured the sandalwood juice into Khair's wounds. For 5 days in a row she did this, bandaging the eyes with clean pads and making him sleep and rest and forget the evil that had befallen him. On the 6th day, Khair woke up feeling much better. The chief's daughter came to him with breakfast and removed the bandage to see the effect of her medicine. Khair looked at her with perfectly healthy eyes. He saw her beauty for the first time. No words could express the happiness and gratitude that Khair felt. Not only was he happy to have his eyes back, but he fell in love at once with the maiden who had restored his sight. Wanting to show how grateful he was, he went straight to her father to ask if he could help in any way. The Kurdish chief asked him to guard his flock, to keep his camels and sheep away from wolves and thieves. Khair did this so well, expecting no payment, that the chief said to him one day, "What present would you like, my son, for all that you have done for us?" "There is a very precious jewel that you possess," Khair answered. "She has violet eyes and long dark locks. She helped me find my eyes again. Without her, my life would be worthless." The Kurdish chief understood at once Khair's request. He went to ask his daughter if she agreed. "Of course, father," was her reply. "Can't you see that Khair and I were made for each other? We promise to give you many, many grandchildren to be your heirs." The Kurdish chief ordered a wedding feast to be held for 7 days and 7 nights. All the neighboring tribes were invited. They came with precious gifts and rare spices. They danced all day and all night, in sunlight and in firelight, until there were no more songs to dance to, and no more feet to dance with, and no more food to eat. The Kurdish chief gave the bride and groom a big bag of gold, some precious carpets, and enough camels and sheep to make them rich for the rest of their lives. He then blessed them and wished them luck. There were many cries and sighs when the young couple left, for Khair was taking his bride back home, as was the Kurdish custom. On their way out of the camp, Khair and his bride passed the sandalwood tree that has saved his sight. He took 2 bags of leaves and asked his wife not to tell anyone about them. After several days of travel, they reached a town where everyone was walking around, crying and wringing their hands. "What is the matter, dear friends?" Khair asked. "Our king's daughter has terrible fits. She shakes, then she collapses, lifeless and exhausted," they answered. "Our king is so sad that he has forgotten how to rule. He spends all his days by his daughter's bed, asking for one doctor after another. Many doctors have come and gone, offering this cure and that, but none have succeeded in helping the poor princess." "I believe I can help her," Khair said. "Be careful, young man," the people answered. "Many doctors have lost their heads because they failed to cure her. The king has now declared that whoever cures his daughter will have her hand in marriage." "Go tell your king," Khair said, "that there is a man in town who can cure his daughter, not for a crown or a kingdom, but for the love of God, of Allah." The people were truly astonished. "Who is this man?" they whispered. Khair's reputation reached the chief with the speed of flames through dry tinder. He immediately asked to see them. "What's your name, good man?" the chief asked. "And what can you do for my daughter?" "My name is Khair, which means good, and I believe I have the perfect medicine for your daughter," answered Khair. "I hope your medicine is like your name. Go now to my daughter's room and see what you can do. You know the rule. If she's not better, your head goes on top of that ladder for all to see. If you can cure her, though, her hand is yours." Khair went to the princess's room and looked upon her face, as beautiful as the moon, twitching with pain. Her body was trembling and she was moaning softly. He took out one bagful of sandalwood leaves and ground them into a fine powder that he mixed with fresh water. He asked the maid to give it to the princess, then leave her to rest. For 3 days the princess drank and slept, drank and slept, drank and slept. On the 3rd day she raised her head and said, "Bring me some food. I am starving." The king could not believe his ears. His daughter was finally eating. He rushed to her bedside and saw her finishing a big plate of rice, lamb, nuts. No sign of trembling, twitching, or moaning. "How is my darling today?" the king asked. "As happy as a lark, Papa," the princess answered. "Who is this doctor who found a cure for my fits?" "He is a young man called Khair, who came from nowhere, carrying a bag. He gave you something to drink, and in 3 days you woke up and said, 'Give me food, I am starving.'" The princess laughed like a dozen tinkling bells. The king was so pleased to see his daughter happy and healthy again that he sent for Khair and told him, "You kept your word. I will keep mine. I know you desired no reward for curing my daughter, but I said I would give you her hand in marriage, and I will do so. I have just ordered the carriage that will take you to the wedding hall. May God bless you, my son, for you are truly a lucky one. Not only will you be marrying my only daughter, but when I die, you will take over from me." Khair accepted with gratitude. He loved both his wives equally, and they all lived happily. The 2 women did everything together, just like twin sisters. The townspeople were happy, for their king was finally free to take care of them. They put up banners that read, "Long live the king and his new heir. May God give them wisdom to rule this kingdom well." But our story does not end yet, for we have to see what happened to Shar and to the 2nd bag of sandalwood leaves. If you want to hear the second part of the story, you need to tune in to another edition of Sufi Voices next week, and I will tell you what will happen to Shar and to the 2nd bag of sandalwood leaves.
The high heavens exalt your name, from which all names take their grace. Timeless glories mark out your reign from your lofty dwelling place. Understanding bounteous one, eternal gift of plenty, omniscient, just and divine, I'll judge in all your glory. زادت باسمك الأسماء يا عظيما يا حليما فردا عطاياك دامت الآيات. You give breeze to the wheeling birds, sustained high up in the sky, as you nurture us here on earth. In your warmth we glorify. You You sent messengers to us, Lord, revealing your word and light. You taught the scale above the soul, but justice is always right. سبحت باسمك المجيد السماء سامت باسمك الأسماء يا عظيما يا حليما يا فردا من عطاياك دامت الآلاء أنت مرتجي من الله عفوا حين يأتي باسمك المجيد السماء سامت باسمك الأسماء يا عظيما يا حليما وفادا من عطاياك دامت الآلاء سبحت باسمك المجيد السماء سامت باسمك الأسماء يا عظيما يا حليما وفادا من عطاياك دامت الآلاء من عطاياك دامت الآلاء صبحت باسمك
That was Sami Yusuf and his song Glorification, of course, glorifying the name of Allah in English and in Arabic. And can you imagine that this song has been heard 7.4 million times and it's been recorded live. Now, of course, water is very important in the Quran. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Ihsan, it says that there is a spring in paradise called the Salsabil, and this water in the Salsabil goes down the throat easily and in very sweet. Also, according to the Prophet, peace be upon him, you should mention the name of Allah when you start drinking and say Bismillah, in the name of God, and praise him. And after you have finished drinking water, you should thank God and say Alhamdulillah. I really love this habit. I think I'm going to try it from now on. And also, the Prophet, peace be upon him, was advising people on how to use water and not to waste it, because he was against wasting water, even during ablutions. He also said, you must irrigate your land first and then leave the rest of the water for your neighbours, so not to be selfish, because water was precious in the desert and it is now even more precious with climate change. Some good advice there. Now, I would like to end my program on water today with a little bit of Muriel Mofroy, Rumi's daughter, because we reached the time when, after the disappearance of Shams and his reunion with Rumi. We want to see what will happen when they are both reunited again. I hope you agree with me that it is time to know what will happen. The waiting was over, writes Muriel Moufroy, and the heaviness that had weighed over the house ever since Shams's departure was lifted. With his return, joy was back. Of course, Maulana and Shams spent all their time together again. But even though Kimya, Rumi's daughter, still missed those evenings when Maulana would tell her a story or help her read some lines in a poem, she had learned to rely more on herself. And, like his grief of the last few months, Maulana's happiness was pervasive. She was in the kitchen stirring a vegetable stew over the fire, thinking of Shams. He is a door, she suddenly thought, a large door giving entry into that something I can't name even when I feel it. Every time she had had a glimpse of this something, it had brought a sudden clarity and sharpness to her life. It had nourished her and made her feel complete. It had filled her with a sense of purpose as well as of joy and gratitude. It had found her in the village, she reflected, and it had been waiting for her here in Konya. Like that afternoon in the snow with Khadija, or that time when she was listening to Tawus in Anna's garden. In the village, the experience had overwhelmed her, and perhaps it was that too that had frightened her. That day when Shams had looked deep into her eyes for the first time, throwing her into confusion. Now she realized that this something had always been a gift. Sometimes it was like a small inner earthquake which left her panting. More often it was like a sudden opening into a vibrant and silent world, but until now it had always come unexpectedly and as though by accident. With Shams's return, all those moments were converging, and his very presence allowed her almost at will to enter the place where her heart was content. Yet something had not changed. Still uncomfortably woven with the very joy she felt was the thirst for more, a thirst now sharper and more painful than ever before. Am I being ungrateful? For a fleeting moment she saw Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi smiling at her reassuringly. "No, you're not," he seemed to say. She looked at the large wooden spoon with which she was stirring the vegetable. Wasn't Shams stirring Konya and the household into a more fragrant dish? The thought made her smile. "Kimya, are you dreaming?" She startled, surprised to see Kara standing in front of her with Alim in her arms and a flicker of amusement in her eyes. Alim wriggled himself down to the floor, and Kara went to sit on the bench in the recess of the window. "Come and sit down," Kara invited her, as if the family meal had all of a sudden lost its priority. Surprised, Kimya put down her spoon and, wiping her hands on a cloth, went to sit beside Kara. "Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi asked me to talk to you," Kara began. A wind of panic seized Kimya. Why such fear, she wondered. Was it because Kara was so unusually solemn? I must not be afraid, she thought quickly. There is nothing to be afraid of. Kara was saying that since Shams's return, Maulana had been thinking how much his friend was part of their life and how much he would like this feeling to be sealed by some link, a link everybody would recognize. She heard the words without understanding them. What did Kara mean? The word wedding hung in the air. What do you think, Kimya? She stared at Kara, puzzled. What was she supposed to think? A wedding? Whose wedding? She asked. Kara took her hand. Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi has been thinking that you and Shams could become husband and wife, she said. Is that something you would like? Kimya felt her body trembling. She couldn't think. It's a great honor, but it won't be easy, Kara was saying. She remained silent for a while and then added as an afterthought, marriage is hard work at times, and the greater the man, the more is demanded of you. Kimya hid her face in her hands, overcome by a flood of emotions. Terror at first, then excitement, then doubt. How could she become the wife of a man of such power as Shams? And what would it mean to be married to him? She took her hands from her face and looked at Kara, imploring her silently for help. Kimya, Kara said, you have grown up here with us and... A loud noise interrupted her. Alim, wooden spoon in hand, was banging on the copper cauldron stored at the far corner of the room. See, Mama, I'm the front soldier. Kimya, her heart pounding in her chest, welcomed the interruption. She could barely breathe. Well, Alim, that's very good, Kara was saying, but now the soldiers have arrived and they're going to have a rest. Alim frowned and pursed his lips. He was not sure he agreed. He banged the spoon a few more times against the cauldron and then, with a sigh, finally nodded in agreement. The soldiers are tired. They're going to rest. And with these words, I come to the end of our program on water. I hope you enjoyed all the gems that I have found and gathered for you on water. And remember to keep digging your well, because water is there somewhere. And remember that love is the water of life, and that to drink it down with heart and soul, said Rumi. And also, more importantly, not only the thirsty seek the water, but the water as well seeks the thirsty. And with these words, I bid you farewell. Ma'as salami, namaste, and see you next. I'm Wafa, and you tuned in to Oneness Talk Radio. One world, one voice. Expand your vision.